Hi everyone, thanks for joining and welcome to our webinar, How to Make Full Stack MongoDB and JSON Apps 100x Faster. So my name is Yukti Dwivedi and I'll be your moderator today. One of my main jobs here at SingleStore is to organize weekly AI webinars. We organize 2 webinars or sometimes 3 webinars per week and demonstrate different data and AI use cases and new tools and technologies. I also post about our upcoming webinars here and now. So if any of these topics are interesting to you, feel free to connect with me to stay in the loop. I'll also like to hear your feedback or any ideas on topics that you would like to see in the future sessions. So feel on LinkedIn. Speaking of future sessions, we've got amazing informative sessions that are coming up on August 19th. As you can see, can you please go to the next slide? As you can see on your screen, we are presenting LLMs in financial services, personalized portfolio recommendation engines. So this is presented by Akmal, who you might recognize as a regular speaker at our webinars. And so on August 20th, on popular demand, we have a 2-hour hands-on workshop. It's called Build a Recommendation System using single-store vector search. And on August 27th, achieve near real-time analytics on Amazon DynamoDB with single-store. So if any of these topics are interesting to you, RSVP right now, and I hope to see you all there. Coming back to today's topic, you're welcome to participate in the discussion throughout the session using the Zoom Q&A button, which is present at the bottom of your console. We have an internal mission statement to try to answer 100% of the audience questions, even if that means following up with folks afterwards via email. Just make sure that you have logged into Zoom with your actual name and email address because we will not be taking up any anonymous questions. Moving on, we would like you all to have a dynamic experience during this webinar, so feel free to try out SingleStore notebooks. Anyone who tries it today will be entered for a chance to win either branded new AirPods Pro or Meta's new Ray-Ban LLM smart glasses. It's absolutely the winner's choice, so simply click the link that is present on your screen. Can we please go to the next slide? Or you can scan the QR code and it will directly take you to the trial page. You may know that SingleStore has had a free trial offer for many years, but just in the past few weeks, we have also announced a new free share tier, which we'll talk about a bit later today. So moving on, please allow me to announce our amazing speakers today. We have Madhukar, who is a technical evangelist here at SingleStore and also our CMO. And also with him, we have Akmal to take care of any of the technical questions that we get. So we're very happy to have you both here with us today. Welcome. The floor is now yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Yupti, and good to see you again, Atmal. We'll get to the Q&A right at the end, but today is a fun one because as Yupti was saying, I am a technical evangelist. What that essentially means is that I am, in many ways, an engineer or a developer in disguise. So I started off my career as an engineer and then eventually got into product management and then finally into marketing. So I still love to build applications. I still love to write as well after I build the applications. So one of the things that I've been playing around with is, of course, as you would know, a lot of our customers are building AI-based application at enterprises, and these are mostly RAG-based application, which is retrieval augmented generation. And there are, if you are, let's say, a full stack developer, then there are certain stacks that you can use to build a full stack application, especially RAG-based application. I'm a big fan of Next.js, so I started off with that. And of course, MongoDB is very well known. It's also known for MERN stack and so on. So what I wanted to do was to take a MongoDB app, and I'll show you how to just take a starter app which uses Next.js and MongoDB, and then utilize that to just build a simple RAG-based app. And actually, you don't even build it. It's there. You can just download, just git clone it, and then effectively add your own credentials, and it's up and running. But as we get into enterprise AI, one thing that I'm seeing quite a lot is, people are not just interested in documents. They are also interested in structured data as well, because every company not only has PDFs, but they also have, let's say, MySQL, Postgres, sometimes Mongo. And so when you want to make that RAG applications a little bit richer by adding more, let's say, analytics-based use cases or analytics-based UI or features, then that's when things start to fall apart, because now you're going across one vector database, and then you're finally going to some other database to grab that chunk, and then finally you're going to another database to do your SQL queries. So today what I wanted to show was that MongoDB app that we took. What if we just moved it over to SingleStore, or you keep the original stuff on Mongo, no code change. And then for the rich analytics, you're basically blending that data from SingleStore, and it's all in one single place and very little code change. In fact, if you just want to run the Mongo, it is zero code change, and I'll show you that. And then if you want to add some features to it, then of course, that's mostly SQL. So that's what we're going to talk about. But I am not really sure of all the people who are currently listening, how familiar is everybody with JSON versus a SQL database? So I wanted to just paint a high-level picture as well, and then we will quickly get into a demo and show and tell, and we'll get into the code walkthrough as well. So if you're not familiar, of course, JSON became really big last few years, almost 10 years now, because when JavaScript became really popular and you can use JavaScript with Node, and of course now Next.js as a full stack framework, you can use JSON as an object. So you don't have to worry about making SQL queries, and then if the schema changes, you have to go and change the code, and you don't need to worry about how do I shard my keys and things like that, which is some advanced SQL stuff. So JSON became extremely popular in the last few years. And of course, the one database out there, which is MongoDB, which is mostly used by developers, is common for transactional databases. So if you're building a very large application to, let's say, read and write a lot of data, then Mongo seems very, very convenient. However, Mongo is not built for analytics, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. So eventually, if I look at the difference at a very high level of these two databases, let's look at the data type first, right? If I look at a JSON, let's say there was a book. So you would have a title. So you have basically a key and a value or an attribute, and this whole thing is an object. So when I want to access something like this, I can just look at the object dot the attribute, I get the value. So I basically am not doing a lot of or any SQL at that point. Whereas the same thing, if I were to do this in, let's say, a SQL database, whether it's MySQL, whether it's Postgres or SingleStore. And SingleStore, for those who don't know, it's a MySQL wire protocol compatible database. And it started off as MemSQL. So it was in-memory distributed SQL database. But over a period of time, we added multiple data types as a feature. So you can not just do SQL, but you can do now store JSON, you can store binary objects, you can store time series, you can store geospatial, and we have had vectors, which was available since 2017, long before ChatGPT came into place. So this gives you a side-by-side comparison of what a relational structure looks like and what is a once large JSON object. So if I were to now say, okay, but how do I access the data? There are two big ways. So as I was saying, if I want to now just access the basically a book feature, I could just look at the object and I can look at the attribute. And I can say, hey, find me John. So this is an exact keyword match. And here, if I were to do this in SQL, I would say select the column. And this is, of course, the table name. And then I would say from this table books as B. So this becomes books. Do an inner join with the authors table where the ID is the same and where the first name is equals John. So this is more like, I would say, a different version of English, but there are different versions of SQL as well. And if I were to just do a one-on-one mapping, then a collection inside MongoDB is kind of a table inside of a database. A document would be a document would be a table. And then the fields would be the columns, right? So we'll look at both of these in a bit. And if I were to go one step further, then there is this notion of aggregations within MongoDB or in JSON databases. And what that effectively means is I could have several different documents, right? So I could have just one document around anything related to books. Maybe I have something related to some other object and so on. Now, if I want to mix and match the data, a JSON is not a great way to manage it because now you have to do something called aggregations. And aggregations, think of them as sequential blocks of code that runs one after the other to get to an end goal. So for example, in this case, it is running a vector search, but it's an aggregate function. You're doing aggregations for one query, then you're doing a match, then you're doing another one, and then you're saying limit one, and then all of that runs and gets you back the data. So it's no longer simplistic, one. And two, if now you want to do analytics, it becomes extremely hard and also very slow because you're going object by object, reading the number, then taking out that number and saying, give me the average of that. Whereas in, let's say, a relational database, and specifically SingleStore database, we store the data both as a row-based and a columnar-based. So that's a separate topic altogether, but think of columnar-based databases which are built for analytics, and row-based is primarily built for transactional. So within SingleStore, you kind of use the same SQL under the hood. It will either get the analytics or from the columnar, or it gets read and write, point read and writes extremely fast. And you could do all of this in one single query. In the sense, I could say, hey, get me an exact keyword match, but also do a vector search and also do a join. And then what you could also do with it is you could say order by, you could say descending by, so you can do filters, and you can say ascending, descending, but also average, sum, all of those math functions. And it does it in a few milliseconds across petabytes of data. In fact, SingleStore has a few customers that runs like 40 terabytes of read and write kind of queries. And one of the upcoming webinars that we are doing will show like a trillion row challenge where you run side by side different databases, including SingleStore, and you would see, and there's a video that I had actually also done. If you just do it with MySQL, for example, it's MySQL or even Mongo for that matter, on 100 million row will take about a minute and a half, whereas in SingleStore, it comes back in 450 milliseconds or something like that. If anybody is interested, just drop a comment and we will send you the link to the video. It's also on our SingleStore video channel on YouTube channel, by the way. So as I was saying, there is challenges with running analytics within MongoDB or JSON databases in general. Now, this doesn't mean that you stop using Mongo. Of course not. Mongo has been around, very well loved by developers. It's great for transactional. But if you are using something like analytics or in-app analytics, which is the example that I'm going to show, then a JSON database or a document-based database is not built for that. And specifically, if you want to do real-time analytics, it's not built for that. And so what you end up doing is if you want to run analytics, you end up doing something like this, where you get the data in and out. So this could be, your classic e-commerce app. But if you want to run analytics on it, you would do an extract, transform, and load, short as ETL, or these days they call it zero ETL, which effectively means ELT. That goes into something like this actually is an analytics database. So it could be in your, Snowflake, it could be in your Databricks, it could be any of the data warehouses that you're using for analytics, but those are all point-in-time analytics. And then if you want to run real-time analytics, you would have yet to go to another database, and then you would put some of that data in there, and then for some queries, you're going there. But this becomes even more stark if you now want to do a RAG-based application. So imagine what happens in a RAG-based application is you will have vectors here, which is what we'll show right now. And you get the data for the vectors, which is your chunk. But if now you want to also run analytics with it, you would have to do multiple queries. And again, JSON is not that great for that. So what we did earlier this year, SingleStore added something called Kai as a database, which think of it as a thin layer in front of the really fast SingleStore engine, and it adds compatibility to MongoDB APIs. So within MongoDB, as I was saying, you could do find one, find all. You can connect it through Mongo SH, which is its own shell, and you can run Mongo, base commands. All of that out of the box should work if you just change the MongoDB connection string to the SingleStore Kai, and it's almost identical. I'll show that to you in a bit. So now you can point your application without any code change to SingleStore Kai, and you obviously get a lot of benefit in speed and all that. But what you can also do is under the hood, it is still a full-blown SingleStore database. So within that same database, in fact, in the same table, you can create a columnar data table or a row-based table. And the queries that you're making, you can mix and match. So you can say, hey, for this, I just want to do a Mongo-based query, and I still want to get the vectors. But by the way, for all the aggregations and stuff, and I have a very trivial example to show, you can run a SQL as well along with it, and you get back the results extremely fast. So with the result, you can build, in today's example, a RAG-based application, which basically gives you analytics as part of that. And so in order to do that, of course, this is straight up pitch. If you're more interested to learn about it, you can go find out more on our website. But like I said, it gives you a bunch of different features in addition to what you get with MongoDB as well. And you can choose to keep some of your data exactly where it is, or you can just change the connection string, which is what I'm going to show. So the next step, what I'm going to do is we will take a MongoDB RAG-based application, and that's available. So anybody can go and get it. And I'll keep posting these links so you can follow along with me, or you can do it later on. Plus, just to pre-answer this question that always comes up, yes, we will be recording this and we'll be sharing this recording later on as well. So that's the first step that we would do. Then I would take the exact application and I would go create a database with Kai enabled inside of SingleStore. And then I'll point the code to that, zero code change except for the connection string. And then I'll take that app and then I will add analytics to it to make it richer. So with that, but before I do this, I wanted to run, just to keep it engaging, a very simple poll. So before I get started, let me just share that poll just to understand how are people currently building their AI apps. So Yukti, do you have that link? Do you want to share it with?
I have already shared it.
Okay, so let's see. Let's see what are the results. Or actually, I just lost that window. Sorry, give me 1 second.
While Madhukar pulls out that window, feel free to try out the poll that I have put in the chat for anyone that joined late. I already see a few people have, I can see that some people are accessing it. So I can put it again for anyone that cannot access it. And just let me know if it's all
Yeah,
right.
so now I am going to reshare my screen. so people can see the live poll here as well. All right, you can see this, right? So it looks like MongoDB 67%, and then SingleStore 33%. That's great. I'm surprised to see nobody using Superbase, Elastic. Great. Yeah, I've seen a lot of Elastic and Pinecone. All right, this is fun. So the next one, I'll give it another 20 seconds, and then we'll also look at how many people are using RAG for your application as well. Oh, I see AWS leading now. So that also makes sense. A lot of people, for at least their production apps, they must be using GCP, AWS, or Microsoft as well. All right, let's do the second one. Are you using RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, for your app? Oh, interesting. So 60% of people say no, 45, oh, now it looks like, wow, this is like watching a racehorse. Yukti, I think we should do it more often in our webinars. It's entertaining to watch this. All right, we'll give it, and there's a total of 18 people who are doing it, 20. And just give it 5 more seconds, and then we will switch to the last question. All right, so now let's do the last one, which is, do you plan to use analytics in your AI apps? Do people say yes? 7 people say yes. Very cool. Okay, we'll give it a few more seconds, and then we will switch over to the show and tell. Wow, so it looks like out of 16 people, 94% do plan to use analytics in the app. All right, so now let's get to the demo, and I'll leave these poll running as well, so in case anybody else wants to look at it later on. So what I wanted to show, and Yukti, just let me know if you can still see my screen.
Yes.
All right. So the first things first, if you go to this GitHub URL, it's on MongoDB Partners. And Yukti, I'm going to send this link to you so you can share with the audience. It is a starter app, and it's a very simple app in the sense it's Next.js and MongoDB based. And if you look at the overall, instructions, very straightforward to do it. And I will walk you through it so that if you want to run it entirely on Mongo, you are able to do it. So first is, of course, you do a git clone. So I'm going to show that to you in my screen. And here is the app, right? And this is the app running. So what this app does is, in order to run it, I will first show it to you. You just have to do, and I'll make it bigger in case people cannot see. I prefer pnpm because it's faster than npm. I just do pnpm install. So after you've done a git clone, it will basically install all the packages. And then once you have installed it, hopefully without any errors, you just do pnpm run dev, or you can just do npm run dev as well. And now, as you can see, it's running in port 3002. So the only thing that you need to do, or actually a couple of things that you need to do in order to make it run, is under the .env file. So you take an example of you will get a .env.example file, and you should make a copy of it, call it a .env. Don't check this into your GitHub repo. Put your MongoDB URL and your OpenAI key, and I will show that to you as well in case you don't know how to do that. And then once you have done that, you would do you would do it in a .env file, not .env.example. And then you do the install and you do the run. Then when you go to this, let me try and make this bigger as well. And just feel to interrupt me, Yukti or Akmal, if it's not big enough. So as you can see, this is the home. It tells you, yeah, this is a Q&A chatbot. And when you click on Q&A, it has a regular chatbot. And right now I won't show it to you because first what you want to do is you want to train it. So what I want to do is I can pick up a PDF that I've created, and it is basically SingleStore Helios error handling errors because I am trying to simulate a co-pilot for customer support. And that is important because a co-pilot for customer support is not directly open to the end customer, although you can choose to do that. But as a customer support rep, I want to get some more richer analytics from an error when I post it as well. So I upload it. And when I do that, it's uploading. As you can see, it will go into the database. I've already created a vector index. I'll walk you through that. And now it's up and running. So now I can go to the Q&A and say, what is this doc about? And it should only respond about what I just uploaded. So it says, it appears to be a troubleshooting guide for set of instructions, blah, blah, blah. And I say, I am getting an connection error. Can you help me out? And of course, in this case, it's using the OpenAI key, but you can use any large language model you want to use. You can even use, or more preferable, at least for me, is the Anthropic Claude 3.5 Sonnet because it's extremely good. So now let's look at what did I have to do inside of MongoDB in order to do this. So first and foremost, you go, if you are on a free, you would just go and create a free cluster. And then when you first do the train, it should create that quote unquote collection, or the way I look at it as a database for you. It's called Chatter. And then within that, what is called a document. And within that, you can see all the different, I would say, JSON objects it's added. So as you can see over here, it has this object ID. This is the chunk of the text, and this is the vector representation that's been stored here. So now, obviously, if you were to do a search, it needs a vector index first. So the way you do that is after you have set up your cluster, you would go to indexes, and then you would create an index here under search, and you would call it vector index. And within the README file, there is this, let me show you, README. It will show you this command that you need to run inside here in order to create the vector. All right, so this is a straight up, straightforward, but a full stack, I would say a RAG-based app. Now, what I wanted to do instead was I wanted to make it richer. So what I did, I took this exact same thing, and then I converted it to SingleStore. And so just change the logo and all that. And if I look at home and if I look at Q&A, just change this over here. This is exactly the same. And training is also the same. If I go and take the exact same thing, it will go and update it or upload it, depending if you have already done it or not. And then what I did was, instead of this ask page, I actually created an ask insights because I wanted the richer functionality to it. So let me just remove this to a slightly smaller window here. And you say, I am getting a connection error. can you help me out? And here, imagine that I'm a customer support agent or customer support person, and somebody is asking me that, hey, I'm getting this error, and maybe I have to open a support ticket and all that. But I also want to get to know exactly, is this just this customer or somebody else? Like, is there more information about it? So when I do this, it not only gives me the vector search, it's actually also giving me the insights from it. It's saying, hey, by the way, for this specific use case, the connection error that you are seeing, currently in the last 24 hours, there are 25 customers or 25 support tickets that have been opened. The total response time is 4 minutes. Of those tickets that were opened, the total number of customers who are affected is 521 is our, let's say, our entire universe of customers, and 128 of them are actually affected. So as you can see, this is simulated data. So it doesn't make sense 25 tickets out of 128 customers, but you get the idea. And then it says, by the way, all these customers who are currently affected, that touches $2.86 million of your revenue. So this is high priority. But I can also look at the sentiments of the affected customers, because maybe it's not a major issue, so it's yellow instead of a red now, or it could have been green as well. So as you can see, the difference between this and this is, yes, it's the exact same thing, but it's also getting back extremely fast, but real-time data. Imagine this is coming in real time and keeps updating. Like, as more people open up support tickets, right here, it keeps getting updated. So how did we go about doing this? First and foremost, what I would do is I would go to, let me remove this out of the way, go to SingleStore. And within SingleStore, let me just give you a lay of the land over here, because this is new UI. So think of SingleStore as similar to other databases, whereas a level of hierarchy. A cluster is called a workspace group. And that workspace group could either be on AWS, or it could be on Google, or it could be on Microsoft. In this case, if you do a free, it's always on AWS. They're a really good partner to us. And this case, I'm showing you the AWS point of view. So within this, now think of it as workspaces that are connected to different databases. So in my case, I had created a workspace, and this workspace is created to a bunch of these databases. But if I show you these settings for this workspace, there is this single box that you check when you're building it or when you're creating the workspace to say, hey, give me SingleStore Kai as well. And when you do that, automatically this database or this workspace, any database you create in it, automatically knows all the MongoDB commands as well. And I say the word all a little bit loosely because Mongo APIs keep changing. So there are a bunch of other databases out there that gives you the MongoDB compatibility, and roughly the coverage anywhere ranges between 80 to 90-ish%. For us, we cover most of them. So I think it's roughly about 90%. So now I've enabled it, and I've created this database called MK Mongo RAG, right? So now if I click over here into databases, these are my databases. And here I want to show, let's say, Mongo RAG. And these are all my quote unquote tables, which were documents inside of Mongo. So if I'll show it to you side by side. So now this is the training data. And if I show the sample data, it's very similar. It shows you the text, and that's the chunk. And it is the text embedding here, but we also create some other stuff here. Now, how do I connect to this? Well, very simple. If I go back to my workspace, and within that workspace, I go to this guy here, I click on connect, and then here I click on MongoDB client. And as you can see, when I choose it, it gives me my entire MongoDB connection string. And this is identical to what you get from a MongoDB cluster. And if you're familiar with MongoDB, you will be able to know exactly where you get that connection string. So now I go back to my code base. And let me get this out of the way because this is now done. And this is the exact same code, but I created a brand new API endpoint, which is called Insights. And in this, I have the connection string, which I'll show it to you in a second. And then I have an API, and this is a very trivial example. But in that API, I am also making a SQL query. For the Insights page, the rest is identical, which basically uses a component, which is the insight card. And in that component, I'm using useState and useEffect. And I am calling this API endpoint along with basically LangChain, and then get back the exact same embeddings and the data that I get back from Mongo as well. So no different change, except when I show you the .env file. Actually, I don't want to show you the .env file. In addition to this, because it has all my credentials, it also has the SingleStore DB, which is exactly what you should see here. So it has these variables. So where do you get these variables from? Let's look at that as well. So remember, I got my MongoDB credentials here. The same way, if I just go in and say, give it for SQL, I can get this. So the user ID is different here, which is admin. This is the connection endpoint. This is the port. Note that for SQL, the endpoint is slightly different. And when I go back to my database, the difference I have here between what I had in Mongo is that here now I've also created this table called customer incidents. And this is like a very simple, it's almost like an Excel sheet. It has varchar, big int, int, float, and varchar. And if I look at that sample data, just synthetic data I generated or manually added, it gives me the customer name, the total customer revenue, the tickets opened last 24 hours. But this is a very naive and a simple example. Obviously, your structured data is a lot different, and you could just go in and do multiple joins and so on. But the idea is now you're mixing and matching this structured data with the Mongo data, which you basically have either moved from Mongo or you've just recreated it because you didn't want to do any change. And that in effect is exactly this. So now where can you get this and start working on your own? So if you go to github.com SingleStore Labs, and I am going to share this with you, Yukti, so you can also share it with the audience here. You just go here. It's the exact same repo, except I just updated the things that you need to do here. You would go create the env file from the example file. And similar to what you did inside of Mongo, you would also need to create a vector index within SingleStore. So in order to do that, you would basically just go to your Data Studio, and you have something called Open Kai Shell. And within Kai Shell, it's identical to Mongo SH. So if you are in Mongo, let me show you where that would be. Database, clusters. It used to be somewhere at the bottom here. Nope. So there is a Mongo SH, which is here. Is this shell? Oh, I need to, that's only if I want to do locally. All right. So basically, it's exactly like Mongo SH, and you can run your command here. And I would say use, what was it, training underscore data, I believe. And yeah. And so here I would just take this command, which creates the exact same vector index, add it, and I'm done. And here, of course, along with KaiShell, you also get the SQL editor. So you, as you can see, this is how I injected some data. What is really cool is you can also ask Squirrel to generate the code for you, or you can generate the SQL or even notebooks if you want to run and create some Python sessions as well. And that's pretty much it. So just to recap, what we did was we went to Mongo's repo, the publicly available repo. We downloaded the RAG or Git cloned it, added our credentials, created a vector index, and this was running. And then similarly, I then created a fork or cloned it locally. Then I created a new page with a new API endpoint, which then talks to SingleStore database in SQL as well. And then basically it returns a joint of both the analytics as well as the RAG here as well. All right, so now I will stop here and see what kind of questions do we have. So Akmal or Yukti, if there are certain ones that we are already answered, or if you want to go through, let me know.
I think you already answered one earlier, Madhuka, was the standard question people are asking it, will the video be available? And you've covered that already. And I think Mohammed is just passing some sentiments on that is nice to see you here. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Just an FYI, we are open for the Q&A sessions for the audience. So if you have any questions, this is the time to ask. And we have Madhukar, who's an expert on the topic, will be taking up the questions live. So in the meantime, I have a question. So if you can answer that for me, that would be like very interesting. And so what do you think will be a best practice for optimizing read and writing operations when you're using SingleStore alongside when you're building a full stack app?
Yeah, so optimization by itself is a big topic, but the big difference, and Akmal,
Yeah.
if you want to jump in, but the big difference between, let's say, MySQL, Postgres, or SingleStore is when you just use the default version, we create a row-based data in memory, right? So because it's in memory, we do an extremely fast commit. So it gives you two things. One, because it's extremely fast commit, you can almost start querying the data while it's in transit. We're talking about a few milliseconds. But when we store that data, it's also stored as a columnar data or a copy of it. So if you're running analytics, it becomes extremely fast as well. Then our own internal algorithm decides based on how many times you have queried something, whether if that query and that data stays in memory or not. Now, remember we said this is horizontally scalable. So the reason why it is still fast across trillion rows that we will do as another webinar is because it has an aggregator node and then it has leaf nodes. And technically you can scale it infinitely. And when you do that, again, depending on how you want to optimize it, whether you want to optimize for reads or writes or just analytics, you create what is called shard keys. And the shard keys will then decide where some of your data is going to live. And then based on that, it will decide how fast a response could be. So you can tweak it with a lot of different commands, but by default, it should be all that good. One thing I just came to my mind, which I did want to share, and I was playing around with this today as well, was if you go to Visual Code, in this case, this is my Visual Code, which is essentially Cursor. And here, if you download the either the SQL tools or MongoDB, and MongoDB is the client that you get from the Visual Studio extension, you can, once you connect it, which is what I did, I can see, and this is connected to the SingleStore, by the way, I can see all my data right here. So all the tables and the documents that are created. So remember we were seeing earlier training data, right? And here it shows me 26 different documents. And when I click on it, I can see the raw data. So this is pretty cool, but there are other tools. If you're using any other connection tools for Mongo, it will work identically with SingleStore as well. So very little change if you decide to go down this path. Almost no change.
All right, so we have one question from Andrew. They say, my question, is it possible to migrate data in other formats, example in Excel, then extract the data, load it into MongoDB, and then later to perform the analytics?
Yeah, there's several ways to do this, right? If you want to do Excel, or I would say more like CSV, because that's a more common technology agnostic format. You can technically drop it in a S3 bucket, and you can create a pipeline in SingleStore, and it's extremely fast ingest. It brings that data. Or within SingleStore, there's something called stages. Let me see if I can bring that up and show it. And what's cool about stages is that you can upload your CSV file. Where am I? Let's see. Deployments stage. Yeah, so let me share my screen again. So if you go to deployments here, and I know the answer, the question was about MongoDB, I'll answer that as well. So basically you go to, again, deployments, and if you're in overview, click on stage, it shows its preview. And here you can upload your file. So I've uploaded my PLG trial CSV file. Then what you can do is click on these three dots and say load to database. I can choose my workspace and I can choose my database. Let's say I want to do it inside of Mongo RAG as well. And when I say generate a notebook, it actually does the inference for me. So it'll tell me, oh, I see, I need to create this table and I need to have this data type, but it gives me the full entire notebook that I just go in and I just keep playing, play. And now my data is in SingleStore. I can run my queries and I'm good to go. Now, if your question is specifically about Mongo, then what you can do is, again, you can write your own Python script, and then you can chunk it and then drop it into Mongo. And then you can move it to SingleStore or keep it there. But as we discussed, if you're running analytics on it, I would say that's not the right use case for Mongo. Oh, and
All
the
right.
question is it possible to migrate data in other formats, example, in Excel, then extract the data, load into. So if your question is to extract the data out of SingleStore, you can do that in any ways, like because it's MySQL compatible, you can do DB dump, or you can, again, export it as a CSV through one of these clients called Table Plus. Or you can write your own Python to extract it and then drop it in a place.
All right, so we have more questions coming in. So we have a question from Das. They say, if I am cloning high dimension data in Mongo to low dimension, what is the right place to do so, Mongo or SingleStore?
I would say it depends on what you're trying to do with that data. If it's like a multimodal data, right? Let's say you're doing audio and video, then again, in Mongo, it could have a very high dimensions, but when you do a dot product or cosine similarity, you would then have to make another round trip to wherever that image or video or audio is to bring it. If you do it in SingleStore, you can do the high dimension and you can choose your vector index. You can say HNSW or PQ or IVF, and you can do mix and match, and you can store the binary data within SingleStore itself. So I would say I'm biased because I work in SingleStore, but I would do it inside of SingleStore.
All right. So,
Yeah, then there's another question. There might be a naive question. No questions are naive, but SingleStore notebooks, account, etc., usable from Visual Studio, or is this the dumbest question? No, absolutely not. So you can there's a SQL Studio, which is an extension in Visual Studio that allows you to connect to SingleStore directly. You can also use the Mongo client, as I just showed, and you can create Jupyter notebooks either in JetBrains, which is what I do, and you can also do it inside of Visual Studio. And then today you have to then go and copy and paste it inside of the browser. But coming soon, we are adding support to GitHub. So if you just upload to your GitHub, we should be able to pull that from the repo, and then you just go and run it inside SingleStore. Without using OpenAI API, can we develop that bot? Well, you need a large language model. So you can choose either OpenAI or you can use something local. If you're running it locally, you can use Llama as well as Llama 3.1, or you can use other providers like Anthropic. All right. Any other
all right.
question?
Feel free to add in your other questions. If not, we can wrap up the sessions. And thanks for your questions, everyone. Just if you don't have any other questions, we can start with the raffle winner announcement and wrap it a little bit early. All right, so Madhukar, can you please share your screen with the link to the upcoming webinars and just all right, thanks everyone for your questions. It really means a lot to us that you take out the time and attend our amazing webinars. So feel free to join our next webinars that are coming up. So I'll just announce those before announcing the raffle winner. And
Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm bringing that.
no worries, no worries. I mean, I do see in the chat that some people like there's
Yeah,
they
you
have
see,
more questions.
Michelle has a question.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
they've not typed it
please
yet.
ask the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can continue supporting that whilst Madhukar just
Yeah.
choose screen up.
I mean, feel free to keep the questions coming in if you have more questions, because we still have some time and I can just make the announcement. And in the meantime, you, if anyone has a question, we can just add in. So we have one more question from Mitali. If you can see it, Madhukar. She says, what are the benefits of using SingleStore for storing and querying data that is initially stored in AWS S3 compared to keeping it in S3 or moving it another platform like Snowflake?
Yeah, so again, depends on your use case. S3 is just a storage bucket. And under the hood, fun fact, you can also use, within our managed services, we also use S3 for very large amounts of data. In S3, you could have the data stored in multiple different formats. You could have it stored in CSV, Parquet, and others. If you want to run analytics on it, I would say you could create a pipeline within SingleStore. That data comes into the database. Now you run your Jupyter notebooks or your SQL, and you can run extremely fast queries, or you just connect it through your application and you're good to go. If your use case is to archive that data, then you can keep it there, right? And the neat thing about the managed services or the cloud version of SingleStore is that because these workspaces are virtual machines, you can light it up, then you can run your queries, and when you're done, you can just bring it down. Your data still stays there under the hood under an S3. So if these are asynchronous jobs, you don't have to keep running the whole workspace perpetually.
All right, thanks for your questions, everyone. And so before announcing the raffle winner, we can quickly go over the webinars that are coming up. On August 19th, we have LMs in Financial Services with Akmal, who's a regular speaker at our webinars. So, and on then on August 20th, there's a workshop that's there on popular demand with Akmal again. It's called Build a Recommendation System Using SingleStore Vector Search. If you have a little issue with following up with the speed during our 1 hour webinars, feel free to join this 2 hour hands-on workshop session. And on August 27th, we have achieved near real-time analytics on Amazon DB with SingleStore. So if any of these topics are interesting to you, RSVP right now, and I hope to see you all there. So moving on, the announcement that you've been waiting for, today's raffle winner that tried out SingleStore notebooks goes to, just give me a second, let me pull out the name. Samina S. Kazi. She is a senior software engineer at Walmart Global Tech. Thanks for joining, ma'am, and really appreciate it. And if that's not you, do not give up. Madhukar, can you please go to the next slide? Please do not give up. And the previous,
This
very
one?
shortly, yeah. Yes, thank you. Do not give up. We will be announcing one more winner before the end of the day. And if anyone that has tried it out today using Madhukar's code, feel free to just go to our trial page, make an account. It just takes 30 seconds and sign up, load in your data, and feel free to play around. And I hope to see you all in the next sessions. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us at team@singlestore.com. Akmal, I see your hand raised. Please go ahead.
I was just going to say, Yukti, so there's a few questions that have come up there. I think people perhaps just want to know a little bit more about SingleStore. I mean, what I would say is if you can spare the time, please do join us on the Tuesday. So we're going to do something hands-on, okay? And yes, a little bit of Python and SQL knowledge is required, but essentially we'll handhold you, walk you through the steps. Because it's 2 hours, it means we have more time and more time to assist you, get you up to speed, and you'll see how easy it is. I mean, Madhukar already showed you the steps that you need to do and how simple it was to build this JavaScript-based application. So we'll look at the other side of the coin. We'll look at Python and SQL and Jupyter, and again walk you through the steps of building from first principles and essentially solving the Netflix problem, recommender systems. How do you build something from scratch using a bit of machine learning and then getting data in and vectors. And by the way, there's no OpenAI API key required. It's all free. So there you go.
I just see one more question from Parth. They say that if I'm using S3 for Parquet storage and Databricks for analytics with Spark SQL, how can SingleStore help me?
Akmal, you want to take that?
Yeah, so we can handle multiple data formats. And remember that there's a standard slide that we also show where we show the integration with a variety of these tools and technologies such as Sparks. Okay, so we have an awesome Spark connector. We can work with the Databricks kind of environment. We have Iceberg integration now. We can work with multiple data formats such as Parquet. And it all boils down to what Madhukar was saying earlier. I mean, think of SingleStore as your database system, long-term memory, okay? And multiple user access. It's that kind of place where you're putting data, allowing lots of people to use that data, and it gives you the ability to query that and at scale, at speed. And that's really the benefits that you get from SingleStore, along with the integration with all these other environments that we can work with very nicely. And that's the key benefit. So you keep some of your existing investment. If you want to do the fast stuff like the analytics that Madhukar showed today, where existing technologies may not be up to speed, up to scratch, SingleStore can help in those situations. And if you're interested and you'd like to pursue this further, please just reach out to us at team@singlestore.com. Let us know. We'll be happy to discuss your problem with you and see where we can help and where we can assist you and move across. Hopefully, you'll be able to see the benefits that SingleStore can provide for you.
All right, thanks for your questions. And I think we can conclude the session because we are almost at the top of the hour. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks Madhukar, and thanks Akmal. And have a great rest of the day, great rest of the night. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.